Okay, we're just about to start clip BP 3ds Max 03. So we'll pick up where we left off, and we've done this clay render, which basically involved very simple materials. Now you'll probably be aware that most computer generated images use what are called texture maps. So we take a photograph of realistic images and stick them on the model. Okay, and the repetition of these images is critical for the image to look believable. If you get the pattern wrong, then it instantly gives away the fact that it's a computer generated image. So I just want to spend a few minutes talking about tiling and how we repeat the patterns of materials on buildings. Okay, there's another supplementary video which covers creating a pattern. Okay, but this one is just going to talk in general about the kind of principle. So I'll close this down and I'll have a look at Photoshop. Okay, so here's a photograph, an actual photograph of a building. Okay, you can see that it's a brick facade on the building, but there's quite a lot of variation. It's not, very homogeneous. It's not like a cladding panel where everything looks exactly the same. When you use something like brick, there's a lot of variation. You can see, where they've broken into different deliveries of brick. It does change. It varies all over the building, and that makes it look more natural. So, we could create this model, for instance, using a material like this, where the brick pattern is extremely clean. We'd be very, very difficult to see any repetition in this particular pattern. Okay, but something like this would look more interesting, where there's a lot of variation. Okay, both of these pictures have been taken from a special website that supplies what are called tileable bitmaps. Okay, I'll show you the website, just quickly show you the website here. Okay, we've got textures.com. Okay, and these are available free to download. So you get some fantastic materials to use in your models for no money whatsoever. Okay, now if I was repeating a pattern of brickwork on a building, then you don't really need a very big pattern. Okay, if I bring this layer on, you can see I've highlighted a portion of the image. Okay, so this is actually all you would need to repeat and create a pattern for brickwork. So let me just show you how that works. I'll turn that layer off just now. Make this the current layer. Okay, if I grab that portion of the picture, okay, I'll copy that and I'll create a new file and paste it in. Okay, I'll then increase this in size. I'll go to image, canvas size, lock it in the corner, change to percentages and double each dimension. Okay, and then paste in the image again. Okay, and you can see that the brickwork pattern starts repeating. Okay, so the module for the repetition is really quite small. But the problem is you start seeing repetition. And if you keep repeating that, if I go to a larger version of that, you can see the problem. We're seeing this little triangle repeated lots and lots of times. And it starts to look boring. It starts to look monotonous. So the better image map is something like this one, the way it starts. Okay, so this is a much larger panel with variation in it, and if this was repeated, it would be much more difficult to see the repetition. So this makes for a better material map for 3D Studio. Okay, it can be even more interesting. We've got a version here that has a protruding row of bricks, so that's casting a little shadow under every fourth course. We've got a shadow line, really interesting material. Okay, the materials we'll be using on our model are fairly simple. I've got the marble panel that we've seen already when we were doing the section. I've got that prepared, ready to place. So it's just been flipped over using Photoshop, flipped over and then combined into one larger JPEG. Okay, with that goes a second map. Okay, so the color information is called the diffuse map. I've got a second version of that which is called the bump map. So what this black line will do is it will push in between the colored panels. It will depress in these areas, and so it will make it look like a joint. Okay, we've then got the onyx panel, and this can actually use the same bump map. Because it's just divided into twos, it doesn't matter if they're not exactly the same shape, it will still work as the bump map. It will still depress the joints in this beautiful onyx marble panel. And then the final map that we'll work with is a much more complicated one. Okay, we've got very large areas of travertine marble. So I've created a big material map that will cover some big areas of the building, and there's enough variation in there to hopefully not look too repetitious. And there's a bump map that goes with that one. Okay, so we've got the 4x3 panels that correspond. If I put them the same size, they correspond with each other. Okay, so our bump maps are very simple ones, just for the jointing. They can be much more interesting. They can have wood grain, they can have carvings. You can do all sorts of very creative things using mapping. So that's where the pictures come from that we'll use. Okay, just wanted to cover that before we start looking at the model in more detail. So I'm going to stop this video just here.